Hello, everyone, and welcome to Movie Goodness, where we examine life through cinema here on the KB Radio Network. I am your host, Kevin Reed, and this is a very, very special episode. And I know I say that every episode, but this is special to me because I've been a comic book fan as long as I can remember. I'm a football fan. I love the New Orleans Saints. Been a New Orleans Saints fan my entire life. I love history. I'm a history buff. Been a history buff my entire life. I love Greek mythology. Real big on that. That's why I can't wait for the Odyssey to come out later this year. But when it comes to comic books, it's something about comic books that I guess you can kind of equate to Greek mythology in a sense with these superhero characters, just like it's depicted in Greek mythology with those characters. But it's something about comic books. I can't pinpoint the moment that I just became a comic book fan. And as much as I followed DC and Marvel, love all those characters, I we all have a favorite if you're a comic book nut like me. You all have a favorite. You know, my best friend, his favorite is Superman. My favorite is Batman. And as much as I love Spider-Man, which comes a close second, I mean, very close. But Batman has always been number one as long as I can remember. Now I've bounced back and forth on who's my second, who's my third, who's in my top five. But at number one, that has never in my entire life never changed, and that was Batman. Still is to this day. Even though the older I get, I I kind of lean towards the Joker more than I lean towards Batman. But that's due to the social construct of the world right now. But I am a huge Batman fan. And a lot of that is probably because of what I was exposed to. We were, around my age, I was exposed to more Batman than anything. You know, you had the reruns of the Adam West Batman show that came out in the 60s, but in the 80s, they were rerun them and I would watch them. And then in 89, of course, we got Batman from Tim Burton starring Michael Keaton and Jack Nicholson as the Joker and all this here. It was just a pop culture explosion of Batman. And before that, of course I was into comic books, but it was the Dark Knight Returns, Frank Miller's version of Batman in that graphic novel that really blew me away around that time, which is the 40-year anniversary of that graphic novel. I did a show on that. If you haven't checked it out, please check it out. But Batman is my jam. So when we got this live action comic book adaptation boom in the early 2000s, we got the X-Men, and you had the MCU kickoff in, what was that, 2008, with Iron Man, and people started taking comic book adaptations a little more seriously. And then when Christopher Nolan hit us with Batman Begins and The Dark Knight and The Dark Knight Rises, it really showcased the fact, wait, we can take this seriously, but still honor the source material. And it was off to the races, the MCU went nuts with the Avengers and all of that. And we got top tier actors vying for these roles, because you would think this would be less than to certain performers, especially actors of a certain ilk, A-list actors. And we got big name stars who were dying to be in these franchises. And it just added a little gravitas to the genre. And so with all this going on around this time, we got a film from DC. DC was kind of lagging back while Marvel was taking over. Marvel had fully established their cinematic universe at this point, and DC was just there. You know, you had the Christopher Nolan Dark Knight trilogy, but you knew it was no cinematic universe being birthed out of that. You weren't going to see Superman pop up in a Christopher Nolan film. You wasn't going to see the Flash or the Green Lantern pop up in those films. And so when was DC going to do something to kind of compete, a friendly competition, mind you, with DC or with Marvel, I should say? Well, they started off with Man of Steel, which was a divisive film for a lot of reasons for a lot of folks. I actually enjoyed Man of Steel a lot. Still to this day, I think it's one of the best comic book movies to come out in a long, long time, or probably ever. It was that good, I felt. Now, did I have problems with it? Of course, I had some issues with it. I still to this day can't wrap my head around the snapping of Zog's neck. Now, I get it for that particular story. I get why he did it, but it just didn't fit for me. And as much as people love Henry Cavill in that role, I didn't like Henry Cavill as Superman. Now, did I hate him? No. I think he was decent, but he just didn't scream Superman to me. A superhero, yeah, but not Superman. Superman is the ultimate Boy Scout, and I didn't get that vibe from Henry Cavill. But with that being said, I was fine with it. If this is the direction, we go on a different route with this universe. Obviously, it's darker universe, and you have Zack Snyder, who directed this film. It fit his sensibilities. Zack Snyder had given us 300 Dawn of the Dead remake, so he has a certain style, and as part of the problem with the fandom, that his style, he's more style over substance. And that's a problem for a lot of people, and especially in Man of Steel, where folks were just upset how they destroyed Metropolis in that final battle with General Zod. But it didn't bother me. But I saw a lot of people super upset about. They were more upset about that than when Superman snapped General Zod's neck. But that's neither here nor there. The movie was good enough to warrant a sequel and set up a bigger universe. Now, in Man of Steel, we saw a lot of Easter eggs. It was a Easter egg, just wet dream, man. It was full of little shots, nuggets from the DC comic universe. One of the biggest ones, aside from seeing LexCorp trucks and all this here, was the satellite that had Wayne Industries on it. And immediately the world went nuts. I think collectively everybody loved that Easter egg, because that let the world know that Batman exists in this world. So how are we going to get an introduction? We after the movie was released and the sequel was greenlit, and Zack Snyder announced, and Warner Brothers, they all announced that they're going to create a cinematic universe, and it's going to spawn off of Man of Steel. We all knew it was just a matter of time before we got Batman in this universe. Now, the question was, would it be Christian Bale? Because this came out around the same time or right after Dark Knight Rises, I believe. And so everybody was a big fan of Christian Bale as Bruce Wayne, Batman. Not me. Now, let me clear it up for all of you who's probably about to click off of it. Wait, relax for a second. Just remember, just think now. I'm a Batman fanatic. I love Batman. And the Batman that I grew up with, the Batman that I envisioned on the big screen, that wasn't the depiction that I uh, that I would like to see. You know, and Christian Bale is a phenomenal actor. If you haven't seen him in The Bride, which was just released, now the movie is being torn apart by critics, but his performance was phenomenal, and he's phenomenal in everything. And he was good as Bruce Wayne. The problem I had with it, and it isn't his fault, the problem I had with the Dark Knight trilogy, the villains were showcased more than Batman to me, and especially in the Dark Knight. I mean, come on, Heath Ledger, God rest his soul. I mean, just it was an armed robbery. How he stole that movie from everybody that was involved. You don't even remember Two-Face was in that movie because he stole every second of film in that movie. In the Dark Knight Rises, Bane was the showcase. Talia al Ghul was the showcase. Now in Batman Begins, he had the stage, and he did great. I thought he did good as far as an origin story. We never saw a true origin story on the big screen, and I thought that was great. So it was immediately asked that Christian Bale would be in this universe. Christian Bale only wanted to do it if Christopher Nolan was directing it, and Christopher Nolan has said after The Dark Knight Rises, he is done with comic book movies. He did produce Man of Steel, and he executive produced this movie we're about to talk about today. But as far as leading the charge, that wasn't on him. He handed it over to Zack Snyder. And with that being said, the internet went nuts at Comic-Con. I think in 2014, maybe 2015. No, it was 2014. And Zack Snyder came out. He announced, like, yes, we're going to do a sequel. We're going to, it's going to be based on this certain comic, but it's not going to be based on it. We're just going to take elements of this comic. And the comic was The Dark Knight Rises, but he didn't, The Dark Knight Returns, I'm sorry. And he didn't say that. He brought out Henry Lennox, who was in Man of Steel, to read a quote from that book. And that quote, I had already, I put it in my will that I want this written on my tombstone. Now, will it equate to anything I accomplished in life? No. But I love this quote so much. It is so gangster. And I'm probably going to say it wrong right now, but you get the gist. I want you to remember, Clark, in all your private moments, I want you to remember my hand at your throat. I want you to remember the one man that beat you. And that's from The Dark Knight Returns. And all of a sudden, when he read that and the theater went black, we saw the Superman logo silhouetted in this light. And then when the light shifted, the bat symbol illuminated behind the Superman logo. And immediately everybody just lost their mind, because finally we're going to get basically the world's finest. Superman and Batman in a film together for the first time ever. I was just blown away. But then it settled down a little bit, and I thought about that quote. And at the time I had to research it because I couldn't quite pick where that came from. And so I had to research it. And I'm like, oh, that came from The Dark Knight Returns. I'm like, well, he told Clark that when he was about to kill Clark. He was about to kill Superman. Wait, so they're going to be fighting? And then the title was released a few months later, Batman v Superman. They're going to be fighting. So is Superman the antagonist in this movie? Okay. Well, let's see where this goes. I mean, we're jumping pretty quick into this universe. They're skipping over a lot of stuff. Because if you haven't read The Dark Knight Returns, that is set when Bruce Wayne is like in his 50s, close to 60, and he's retired, and he's been through all of the battles with the Joker and Two-Face and the Riddler and Catwoman, and Robin died, and well, at least one of the Robins had died, and all this other stuff. So it's like we're skipping over a lot of lore to get to this point to try to catch up with Marvel. That I just could not wrap my head around. But all that was dashed away. Well, I say dashed away, but it was kind of put on the back burner when they announced who was going to play Batman in this movie, or who's going to be the Batman in this cinematic universe. And it was none other than Ben Affleck. And, you know, I can remember when it was announced because it was the craziest coincidence of all time. I was sitting down with my wife. We were watching Gone Girl. And I mean, literally watching Gone Girl. And my phone went off. I got an alert and I looked at it and it said Ben Affleck's been cast as Bruce Wayne, Batman in Batman v Superman. And all I did was yell out, "What?" And my wife was like, "What's wrong? What's wrong? What happened?" And I said, Ben Affleck is Batman. In her words, and I'll never forget it. Her words to me was, "I'm not watching it." Now we're watching Gone Girl, and Ben Affleck did a great job in Gone. Ben Affleck. The problem wasn't Ben Affleck's acting. I enjoy Ben Affleck's acting. He's an even better director, but I enjoy his acting. But as Batman, just I'm literally watching him on television. I'm watching him, looking at him, and I just didn't see it. I just could not see Bruce Wayne. Anybody can be Batman. You put the cowl on, you can disguise it. But as Bruce Wayne, that's the litmus test for me. Can you portray that version or that half of their character? I just couldn't see it. So the trailers come out. We're getting closer to the date. The trailers come out. I'm like, okay, okay. I'm interested. This looks like it's gonna be pretty gangster. And then more trailers came out, and more trailers came out. I think about 5 trailers for this movie came out, and I'm gonna address that a little later on, probably after we go through the review or the recap of this movie. But the date arrives, March the 25th, 2016. Yes, 10 years ago today, and well, not today, in a couple of weeks, at least the time of this recording. And I was blessed to have received an early screening for the movie. I think I saw the movie on the 18th, something like that, because it was right before my birthday. And I was like, this is the greatest birthday present of all time because my birthday's on the 20th. And I'm sitting there like, wow, I can't believe I got these tickets. And I got 4 tickets. It was enough for my family, my wife and my daughters. And so we went to go see this early screening of Batman v Superman, Dawn of Justice. And early on, once I left the theater, I was so blown away. I thought this was the greatest thing to have ever happened in comic book movie history. And I'm going to explain why I felt that way 10 years ago and why that shifted about 3 months later. 3 months later, I don't know if it was peer pressure or whatever, because nobody else felt the way I felt after I watched that movie. I brought my friend. He passed away not too many years ago. I think it was right before COVID. in 2019. Yeah. And I brought him to go see it. I wanted him to see it so bad. I paid for his ticket. I said, you need to see this. And so I brought him to the theater. We went to go see it. And he really didn't have much to say. He was like, yeah, it was interesting. And that was it. He didn't elaborate or nothing. Normally we'll go watch a movie together. We'll stand outside the theater for about another hour and a half to 2 hours breaking down the movie. We didn't do that this time. And I knew then I was in trouble. I knew then that he was not feeling this movie. And so I left it alone. I told him my feelings. Well, I had been telling him my feelings. And he was like, man, I got to see it. So that's where the offer came from. I'm like, look, I'll buy your ticket. Let's go. And so we went to go see it. But anyways, I left it alone. And I went to go see it for a third time by myself this time. No family, no friend. I went by myself. And when I left out this time, I fell in the camp with everybody else. Because I sat there and I didn't want to watch it. Normally when you watch something for a third time, by that time you're at home. So you could just change the channel. But I couldn't. I was in the theater. So now I'm just stuck there and I don't want to see this. I immediately felt I don't want to see this no more. I'm good. This movie is not that good. And the structure and the way it was laid out, everything was just silly. And it was like I woke up. I was in this euphoric dream state the first two times. And then I woke up and watched it fully awake. And I felt so ashamed. I just felt bad. Like, why did I like this movie? And the reason is, I loved elements of this movie. I mean, loved. There are elements in this movie that I would consider some of the best live action comic book stuff in all of comic book movies. The fight, the Batman fight, not the fight between him and Superman, but the fight in the warehouse with Batman. It was like the Arkham Asylum game coming to life, that I owned all four of those games. So I knew those moves. It came to life. To see Bruce Wayne in his Bruce Wayneism. Ben Affleck is arguably one of the best Batmen in live action, in my humble opinion. That never changed. And so those elements were good. I got to see a few comics that I've been hoping and wishing and praying to see on the big screen in live action. I got to see a version of The Dark Knight Returns. I got to see a version of Injustice. I got to see a version of Kingdom Come even. I got to see a version of Crisis on Infinite Earths. It was a slight version of those. Flashpoint. I got to see that, but the problem was it was compacted into one movie, and it was too doggone much. And it clicked that day, sitting in the theater after on the third viewing, and I just had not watched it since. I've seen bits and pieces of it, but I didn't watch it again until a week ago when I was doing research for my 40th anniversary show for The Dark Knight Returns. And, I acknowledged the fact that that movie or that comic book inspired this film in a lot of ways. And it got the juices burning. And I was like, I want to watch this again. And then it dawned on me that it was 10 years. So I said, you know what? What better time than to look back 10 years since Batman v Superman Dawn of Justice and ask the question, is it as bad as everybody said it was? I don't know. I'll let you know my answer at the end. But let's break it down. Batman v Superman Dawn of Justice was released March the 25th, 2016. It is directed by Zack Snyder. It was written by Chris Terrio and Michael S. Not Michael, but David S. Goyer, and it is the kind of sequel, not technically or really the sequel to Man of Steel, but depends on who you ask. But it's the second film in the DC extended universe, and it stars Ben Affleck as Batman, Henry Cavill as Superman. You also have Amy Adams, Jesse Eisenberg. We'll get to him. Uh, Diane Lane, Laurence Fishburne, Jeremy Irons, Holly Hunter, and Gal Gadot. We'll get to that too. Batman v Superman Dawn of Justice is the first live action film to feature Batman and Superman together, as well as the very first live action cinematic portrayal of Wonder Woman. The film, basically a criminal mastermind, Lex Luthor, he manipulates Batman into a preemptive battle with Superman, whom Lex is obsessed with destroying. Now, there are two versions of this movie. There's the theatrical version that came out, and that's the one we're going to talk about today. And there's also the director's cut, which is ultimately the ultimate edition that came out, I don't know, maybe a year after this movie came out. And it has about 30 minutes of additional footage. It is rated R, and I didn't see how it was rated R. Yeah, they had, the only differences I saw, there was blood involved. They had some blood, especially in that warehouse battle. It did seem a little more violent, but it wasn't like full on F-bombs and gratuitous sex scenes and all this here. It was just stuff that they cut out to make sure that it was a PG movie when it was released. But we're going to talk about the theatrical version. I'll say this. The ultimate version, the difference is that they had an extended investigation going on with Clark, trying to find out who Batman is or why Batman is back. And we got a little more with the character played by Wima Musaki, who was in Sinners, nominated for Academy Award this year. Hope she wins it. Well, not really. I want Amy Madigan to win, but I wouldn't be mad if she won. But this was the first time I ever seen her in something, and it was only brief in the theatrical version. But we got more of her in the Ultimate Edition. There was, what was it? It was more of. No, I'm thinking of the Justice League. Don't worry about it. But anyways, not important. Who cares? Let's break down this movie. This isn't your standard review of the film, more of a breakdown, and I'm gonna try to do it quickly because this will be a 5-hour show, and I'm already close to 30 minutes into this episode. So we're not gonna go beat by beat per se, but we'll break it down in acts. So let's go through Act 1. Act 1, it starts with a flashback, and for the umpteenth time, we got the flashback, we got the origin of Bruce Wayne's parents being murdered and those doggone pearls being shattered down the alley. But it starts off with Bruce Wayne. He's running from the funeral from where his parents are being laid to rest, and then he falls into this cave. And so when he falls in the cave, he sees bats, and then the bats surround him, and they create like this wind vortex type deal, and he starts levitating up the hole. And immediately, we already 5 minutes in, and immediately, and this goes back to the first time I watched it, I'm like, oh no, Oh no, no, they are not about to do this to me because that was silly. It did. He snaps out of it present day, and he was doing the narration, and he was like, "Oh, in the dream." I was like, "Oh, thank you, Jesus, thank you, God. This is just a vision. we, that wasn't real." But we pop into the present day. It's 18 months after this giant battle uh, uh, that took place in Metropolis between Superman and Zod, and you have Bruce, who's a billionaire now. He arrives in Metropolis to go uh, rush to one of his buildings. That's a Wayne Enterprises building, and he has workers there. And I thought this was a cool scene because we get to see this battle from a different perspective. In Man of Steel, we saw it from the air because it was Superman and Zod flying around, going through buildings and so on and so forth. But now we get the ground level, the ground zero level, almost, and I mean this with no disrespect, but it was almost in a 9/11 perspective that we saw all of this chaos that is taking place in Metropolis. And so Bruce Wayne, he's rushing in, and then one of the coldest moments, and this was in the trailer. The coldest moment was when the building started falling down, Wayne Enterprises, and you see the dust and the smoke, and people are running away because the building is collapsing. You see one idiot running towards the action, and that is Bruce Wayne, and he's running towards the danger. And I thought that was excellent because I call him an idiot, but I don't call our first responders, those firefighters. Those are not idiots. Those are heroes. These are comic book characters, but those are real life heroes because they did do that in 9/11. They do that when your house is on fire. You're trying to get out, but they're trying to get in. And so my hat goes off to them. Nothing but respect because I'm not built for that. I can say that with my whole chest. I'm a man, but I just can't do that. I don't have that gear in me. And now in situations, who knows? But I've never been put in that situation. I pray I never be put in that situation. But Bruce Wayne, he ran to it. And it really puts things in perspective because, yes, this is a superhero movie. We got superpower beings and whatnot, but he's not. He's a normal person. He can be killed just as easily as those people in those buildings could be. And that's what makes it more heroic. And so at that point, this is where the hatred started towards Superman for Bruce Wayne because of his actions here, Cool. All right. We started off good. Problem was we saw this entire scene in the trailer. And you're going to hear that a lot throughout this show. You saw this in the trailer. So nothing really shocked me watching it on the big screen. Skipping around, we go to Lex Corp, and we meet Lex Luthor. Jesse Eisenberg. I love Jesse Eisenberg in The Social Network. Love him in a lot of things that he was in, Zombieland and whatnot. He's a really quirky character. Now You See Me and all this. I love Jesse Eisenberg. Hated his guts as Lex Luthor. This was probably the biggest miscast in movie history. I don't know what the thinking was. I have no idea. He probably could have pulled it off with better direction. He was so over the top. I just could not, at no viewing, even when I liked it, when I enjoyed it, when I thought it was the best thing since sliced bread, my first viewing, I still hated Lex Luthor. I did not like his portrayal of Lex Luthor. I will give him this. It was different. You would never say, or you would never hear anybody say that he tried to rip off Gene Hackman. He tried to rip off Kevin Spacey. It was none of that. None of that. He made it his own, and he can keep it too. And so we get introduced to him. We find out that he found kryptonite, trying to get it back to the United States, needs the help from the senators and all this other political stuff. That all that was interesting. It just I couldn't get into it because of the Jesse Eisenberg of it all. And so we fast forward to a gala at LexCorp. We find out that Bruce is searching for this ship, and he tells Alfred that there's a bomb on it, gonna blow up Gotham, and blah blah blah. So he knows that Lex Luthor probably knows about it. He tracks it down. So he goes to this gala to get information to steal files from Lex Luthor. So while he's there, we get the first meeting, the first on-screen meeting between Bruce Wayne and Clark Kent. Epic. Should have been the crowning moment of the movie, that we get to see these two face to face, and I love the back and forth between those two, and I especially love Ben Affleck. This is when I was sold on Ben Affleck in this moment. His just taking down Clark Kent in this moment, it was just money to me, and it was so Bruce Wayne. Everything that I love about Bruce Wayne, from the comics, from the animated series, and so on and so forth, it was wrapped up in this scene, in his portrayal, because nothing scares Bruce Wayne. He doesn't care who you are. He doesn't care what you can do. Now, at this point, he didn't know, at least as far as we knew, he didn't know that that was Clark or Superman, that Clark Kent was Superman, but he didn't care. He doesn't care. But I thought that was a great scene. We also got introduced to Diana Prince at this same gala. Diana Prince, played by Gal Gadot, who we all know as Wonder Woman. She was at the gala as well. Well, I'll save that to later. I'll save that to later. But anyways, Wonder Woman ended up taking the files and stealing it from the original thief, Bruce Wayne. So you have that. And they track each other down. Not, like I said, I'm bouncing all around with it because I'm trying not to stay here until the 20-year anniversary, trying to break it down. But anyways, he tracks her down, and she tells him, look, I'm looking for a photo. This is in later scenes, of course. I'm looking for a photo that Lex has, and I know it's on this drive, but I can't break it. Maybe you can break it. I left it in your car. All right, cool, whatever. And so when Bruce breaks into this file, he finds the photo. He finds the white Portuguese. He finds all the information that he's looking for. But also, he found the files for other metahumans. So he clicks on it. He clicks on the file, and in the file, we already got the logos. We already got the symbols and the nicknames for these metahumans: Wonder Woman, Flash, and Aquaman. And that just rubbed me, once again, even in the first viewing, did not like that scene. Did not like the fact that Lex Luthor knows who everybody is. Not only knows who everybody is, but named them. and Cyborg, I left him out. Cyborg as well. But they weren't even superheroes at this point. They were just metahumans. They were just mutants, so to speak, if you want to talk in Marvel terms. But why is this on file? But anyways, Bruce finds the photo. He clicks on the photo, and we see Diana Prince in her full Wonder Woman getup in World War One, with a group that she fought in World War One with. And so immediately he's like, wait, this is so she's one too. And so you have that. And all right, we bounce around. We go back to Congress is still questioning the Superman of it all. Do the world need Superman? But we do have Superman, but should he not do good? But if he does good, he needs to run that through Congress first. He needs to run that through the U.S. government first. Typical U.S. government stuff. So yeah, that makes sense. All right, that's fine. Like I said, I like all of the political intrigue section of this movie. And that made sense. That broke it down. It gave it that realistic touch that you needed. To kind of ground the movie a little bit. So, all right, cool. All right, Superman, he shows up at this hearing due to what took place in this nation. I think it was the African nation where Lois was there, Jimmy Olsen was there, and I guess I might as well touch in on that. Jimmy Olsen, yes, he made his grand opening, grand closing at this in this scene. He ended up being a CIA operative or something, disguised as a photographer working for Lois, and he gets killed there. Wait, and then he was a full grown man. Actually, he was older. He looked older than Lois. It was dumb. That threw me off. But anyways, Superman goes to save her, like he always does. He kills this terrorist leader and all this here, but he gets blamed for multiple deaths in this village. And I don't know how he gets framed for this, or if he actually did it, because he never cleared it up. Oh, I didn't kill anybody. I didn't do that. But okay, if you if you did do it, you need to account for it. But that was never cleared up, and this is why Congress is at him. Want him to be apprehended or whatever, or some accountability for what took place. And so, with that being said, he's at this hearing. One of Bruce Wayne's former employees, who was in that building during the Metropolis tragedy, he lost all of his legs, and Lex Luthor got to him, gave him this robotic chair that ended up being a bomb, and he goes to talk to a senator who is played by Holly Hunter, convince her to speak at this hearing. So he's in the place, and the bomb blows up. The bomb explodes. It kills everybody. For what? I don't know. That still has never been explained, because you wasn't going to kill Superman, and the fact that he didn't see the bomb in the chair. Now, I read in breakdowns that the chair was made out of lead, but that was never explained in the movie. Now, in case you've been living under a rock and don't know about Superman's lore, he can't see through lead. His X-ray vision doesn't go through lead. But if that was the case, how did Lex Luthor know he can't see through lead? Keep in mind now, Superman's only been around for about 2 3 years tops at this point. And so knowing all of this information, it's almost impossible, virtually impossible. But we were led to believe that in this film. Anyways, so the explosion happens, and Batman, he breaks into LexCorp. He steals the kryptonite. He starts to build this kryptonite weapon. Well, actually, several weapons from this kryptonite that he stole from Lex Luthor. Lex, he manages to lure Superman by kidnapping Martha Kent, and Lois as well. And so he saves Lois. He confronts Lex, who reveals that, I have Martha. I have your mother. And so if you don't go and kill Batman, I'm going to kill your mother. All right, that's how the fight starts, people. That's the fight. that was the opening bell. And so Superman, he tries to explain it. Now, I'll give him this. He didn't go over there and just try to fight Bruce. He went over there to try to tell him what was going on. Bruce didn't want to hear it. At this point, Bruce was he got his prep time. He got his prep time. He set up all these traps. He got his kryptonite weapons. He got his anti-Superman suit on. It was. There's no more talking. It's time. It's time to go to blows. And they went to blows. I actually enjoyed that fight. I thought it was a convincing fight for Superman and Batman to have. It wasn't far fetched. Because the comics in the Dark Knight Returns, that's pretty much blow by blow how it went down. You couldn't have done it any other way and made it quote unquote believable. So it all made sense. So we get to the point where Batman gets the upper hand. He's about to launch the final blow on Superman with this kryptonite spear that he created. And then Superman, in his final breath, spews out two words, the two most powerful words in all of DC Comics: save Martha. Now, at the time, at my first viewing, it didn't bother me. It bothered me, but I didn't see why it bothered other people. It bothered me because it was so abrupt. I didn't really look at it because I was too wrapped up in the fact, and I felt like an idiot, still do to this day, the fact that I never put two and two together, that Batman and Superman their mothers have the same first name. As much as I read comics for over 40 something years, I never put that together. And so when this moment happened, I'm looking around, I'm like, oh my God, they got the same name. I didn't even care about the fact how stupid that this would end the fight. but I was too caught up in my own foolishness to really pinpoint the fact that this is dumb. But anyways, save Martha. So when Bruce hears this, he's like, hold on, how do you know that name? And blah, blah, blah. And then conveniently, ex machina, you have Lois Lane rush in and say, that's his mother's name. And then that was that. That was the end of the fight. And not only did that make Bruce Wayne come to his senses, he just shifted tones all together. Alfred tried to convince him through this movie. Other things that took place throughout the film. Superman talked to him earlier and told him to stop. He wouldn't listen. But the fact that Martha, hearing that name, just changed his whole worldview. He automatically, Martha, because they were going to split up. One was going to go after Martha. One was going to go and stop Lex and this, that, and the third. And Batman is like, I'll go after Martha. Martha won't die tonight. It's like, what is this? Now, in the comics, you can read that in the comics and buy it. It did not work on the big screen. It did not work. But going back to my thinking, I'm telling you, this is a therapy session for y'all. Yeah, or at least for me, to y'all. That didn't bother me at the time. It did in the third viewing, but in the first one, it didn't bother me. And so, because I knew where it was going to lead. I knew it was going to lead to the warehouse fight, which we got next, in which we saw, it wasn't leaked. Warner Brothers showed the whole fight a few days before this movie came out. They put it on YouTube. They showed the whole fight. And so when you saw it in the theater, it didn't have the impact. It had zero impact when it happened. Now, I was still excited. I still loved everything that I saw, compared to me watching it at home on a television and then watching it in IMAX. Yeah, it was a different feel. It was it was a completely different feel, but it just didn't have the impact. It's like the first time you get to see it on the big screen. But Warner Brothers spoiled it. So, anyways, uh, Bruce, needless to say, he rescued Martha Kent. Uh, Superman, he goes, finds Lex, and then Lex, he awakens the old body of Zod, and he turns Zod into Doomsday. Another comic that I loved, the death of Superman, that they implemented into this movie. Didn't want it in this movie. Once again, spoiled in the trailer. They showed him in the trailer. So immediately when I saw this in the trailer, I knew, well, Superman's going to die. It's Doomsday. Why else would you put Doomsday in the movie? It's Doomsday. And so they have this battle, and Wonder Woman, she shows up. Wonder Woman shows up out of hiding after 100-something years of hiding and whatever. And this was the best part of the movie. Best part of the movie because we've never seen it. And then that score that came out when she dropped down and blocked Doomsday's beam, and it was just great. It was a great introduction, one of the greatest introductions in comic book movie history. Okay, so here we are. Then we get the epic shot, which is still one of the greatest shots ever, man. Zack Snyder, he knows how to film. Now, you can say what you want. He knows how to frame a scene. And when he had Superman, Wonder Woman in the middle, and Batman on the other side, the holy trinity of DC Comics, if not all of comics, on the screen together for the first time, an epic battle-ready shot. Oh, my God. It brings tears to your eyes. Unfortunately, those tears came in my eyes in the trailer because we've seen it already. But anyways, they fought Doomsday. Lois goes back for the spear with kryptonite because I guess she just knew that was going to kill Doomsday. She goes back to try to get the spear. She ends up getting trapped under some rubble. Superman hears this from 3 miles away. He flies over, saves her. He goes get the spear, even though it's killing him because it's kryptonite. Then he grabs the spear. He kisses Lois, tells her that you're my world and all this here. Can barely hold the spear up, stabs Doomsday in the heart. But Doomsday had his arm severed by Wonder Woman, and he had the bone grow out of that snub, that stub in his arm, and he uses that bone to impale Superman because he's weakened by the kryptonite, and they both perish right there amongst the rubble, and that was basically it for that. Superman dies, and Lex Luthor goes to prison. Batman is feeling remorseful. He pays for the funeral, which is ironic because he was trying to kill the man the entire movie. But you pay for the funeral. He tells Wonder Woman that we got to get the team together and, find the others because something bigger is coming and blah, 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 blah. Lois spreads dirt on the coffin, and in the final shot of the movie, we see subtly dirt start to rise off the coffin, and it cuts to black. And so that was Batman v Superman, Dawn of Justice. Now, was it as bad? Like I said, I watched it last week again in preparation for this show. Really, really, just for my own enjoyment, to be honest with you, but it was for the show. I wanted to see. I really wanted to know, is it as bad as I remembered? It wasn't. I know, going by how I described it here today, it sounds bad. But on the screen, in action, it's not that bad. Now, is it better Then I thought, like, oh man, we had it wrong. It really is good. No, I'm not. No, I'm not saying that at all because it wasn't. It wasn't good. It should have been good, but it wasn't good. And there's a lot of factors that went into it, as you heard me throughout the recap of the movie. The first offense of this movie, the trailers. They ruined this movie. You literally saw 70% of this movie in the marketing material leading up to the movie. You saw everything. You saw Wonder Woman. You saw Doomsday. You saw the warehouse fight. You saw the first confrontation or face to face between Batman and Superman. You saw what Lex Luthor plan was. You everything. You saw it was nothing left to the imagination when you went in to see this movie. And they completely ruined the movie. Now, for kicks and giggles, let's strip away the trailers for this fool. But well, I'm probably right there. But for this movie, would that have improved your viewing for the first time? No. It would have been a little better because you would have been excited for seeing this stuff for the first time on a big screen. But at the end of the day, like me, if you would have viewed it a second or third time, you would have came to your senses. You would have had your martyr moment, and you would have stopped. You know, you would have been like, this movie isn't that good. So yeah, the first offense was the trailer. The trailers, and like I said, I think they released like 5 of them. I could be off by 2 or 3, and I'm talking on the low end. But anywho's, the second offense that this movie had, it was too much going on. They tried to put too much into this movie. They basically tried to take one phase and put it in one movie. Yeah, like a Marvel. And you know, I hate comparing Marvel to DC because they're 2 different things. The only commonality that they have is that they're comic book movies. But Marvel took their time. They hit you with Iron Man, then came with Iron Man 2, then gave you Thor and gave you Captain America, and then we got Avengers. You know? It's in the Incredible Hulk. They took their time. Then you got that. Then they went to phase, I think that was still phase 1. No, that was all phase 2. But anyways, they broke it down again. Gave everybody another movie. You got another Iron Man. You got another Thor. You got Guardians of the Galaxy. Then you got other movies. Other movies. Then you got Avengers. What was the second one? Age of Ultron. And so they built up these movies. You know, whether they were great movies or not, that's up for debate. But at least they built them up. It was earned once you got to the Avengers. Not here. They tried to put one phase in one movie and then immediately go into Justice League, which they did. They went straight into Justice League, and we weren't introduced to no other member except for cameos in this movie. We saw not even a whole scene, but just a glimpse of the Flash, literally. We saw a peek of Aquaman. We saw a peek of Cyborg. And then you want to introduce a movie or go into a movie where we have to feel something for these characters, you know, follow behind it. It made no sense. They rushed it. Now, I will say this, like I said before, here was my argument. Here was my final argument when I discussed this 10 years ago about Batman v Superman: Dawn of Justice. When I was asked, how did I feel about this movie? I said I didn't like the movie, but I liked everything that I saw in the movie. And here I stand 10 years later, feeling the exact same way. The movie was bad. It was poorly constructed, but everything that I saw, I loved. I loved seeing the Dark Knight Returns version of Batman. I loved seeing the injustice little scene that we saw in that dream sequence with Superman pretty much enslaving the world. We got to see parademons in this movie. We saw Wonder Woman for the first time. Now, when Gal Gadot was first cast as Wonder Woman, I had just seen Fast and the Furious 13 or whatever, whichever one she was in, the last one she was in. I saw that and I'm like, oh, she's a beautiful woman, but Diana Prince? No. No, she's about as big as my number 2 pencil. I just did not, no, I did not see her as Wonder Woman. Still don't to this day. And I will say, out of the, 5 times that we saw her, Batman v Superman, Wonder Woman, Justice League, Wonder Woman 84, and what was the 5th one? Was it, where am I thinking about the other version? The other version, because there are 2 versions of Justice League. Well, we'll say that 5. Out of those 5 times, the best I've seen her as Wonder Woman was in this movie. Was in Batman v Superman: Dawn of Justice. This was the best I've seen Gal Gadot in anything, because she is not a good actress at all. I'm sorry, but there's no other way to say it. She is not a good actress, but this movie, she did great. Go back and look at every scene that she's in before she becomes Wonder Woman. When she's Diana Prince, the chemistry between her and Ben Affleck was great. And I've noticed that's a pattern, because when she's bouncing off of a really good actor, she's good. Like in Wonder Woman, as much as I did not like Wonder Woman, and I know a lot of people did, but it just didn't do anything for me. I don't hate it. I don't dislike it as much as I'll dislike this movie. I thought it was good for what it was, but I'm not cheering like it was the best out of the DCEU. I like everybody else. I did not have that feeling. But what I did like out of it was the chemistry between Gal Gadot and Chris Pine. I thought that was great. But that movie just didn't deliver for me. But this was, in my humble opinion, her best portrayal as Diana Prince in this movie. I loved her in this movie. Now, my final point, and it's to add on to what I was talking about earlier, and what's a lot of people's gripe about this movie was Save Martha. There's not many ways you could have stopped this fight and, continued on this buddy thing, now we're best friends type thing. There's really no realistic way they could have done it in this film other than that. And that makes me mad. It's upsetting that this is the result of that. I get it. Trust me, I 100% understand where they were going with it, but it didn't deliver the way they thought. They tried to set it up that way with Bruce Wayne moping about and brooding about his mother and visiting her gravesite and having visions of her death and stuff like that, how it's really making an impact on his life. We all know that, and they showed that in the film. I get where they were going, but it just didn't have the impact. Plus the fact that why would Superman at this moment say save Martha and not say save my mother? That would have made more sense to me. Why would he say Martha? It was just dumb. It was so convenient, and it was. I felt insulted, to be honest with you. You're trying to insult my intelligence as a moviegoer at that point, and so it's like I don't know, but the movie had a lot of potential, and when you have a movie with two of the biggest comic book characters of all time, I don't care what nobody say. I love Marvel. I love Spider-Man. I love X-Men. I love them all, but let's be real, people. Batman and Superman are the most identifiable superheroes in all of pop culture. Everybody knows who those two characters are. I don't care if it was your little nephew or your great grandfather. They know who these characters are. These are the two biggest characters in comics, and when you put them in a movie together for the first time ever, it should have been excellent. This should have been a surefire hit. The movie made money. It wasn't like it was a box office bomb and disaster. The movie made close to $1 billion. It ended up making $875 million at the box office. Not too bad. But when you have these two characters, it should have went well over $1 billion. Just to put it in perspective, Joker made $1 billion. I'm talking about the first one. It made $1 billion. The Dark Knight made $1 billion. And so you would think this movie was like penciled in for $1 billion easy. It didn't. It struggled to get to that 875. But to no avail. That it's over. It's 10 years later. I wish it was better. I will say this, after viewing it again just this past week, I do appreciate it. I don't hate it, but I do acknowledge that it's deeply, deeply, deeply flawed. But it's not as bad as I thought it was. But that don't mean it was 10 times better than what I thought it was either. It's kind of a weird thing. Maybe in 20 years, I would think differently. But 10 years later, it still stings to know that this had a lot of potential that went absolutely nowhere. And especially given that we received Justice League immediately after this that was 10 times worse. So I'm just more disappointed than anything when it comes to Batman v Superman Dawn of Justice. But I will implore you, if you haven't watched it in 10 years, go back and watch it again. See if you still have the same vitriol that you had for it 10 years ago. Or do you appreciate the little things that would, like I said, I appreciate the little things that they were doing in this movie. And I think a lot of that, I'm not even pinning it on Zack Snyder. I think a lot of that was studio. A lot of studio interference went into this movie. And so, another point I wanted to make real quick before we get out of here. How dark. It was dark. It was dark. People were spoiled. People got spoiled with Marvel, with the bubbly, with the jokes and the lighter tones. Whereas we got this dark, moody, raining all the time universe when it comes to Superman and Batman. But it is what it is. But if I gotta grade it, I guess I'll go ahead and grade it since I've never reviewed it in the past. But if I got to give it a grade on the A to F scale, I give Batman v Superman Dawn of Justice, which was released in 2016, a letter grade of a C. It was a movie. It exists. They had elements that I enjoyed, but they also had elements that I just deeply, deeply despise. But that's just my opinion. I would love to know. I would love to know two things. Number one, How did you feel when you first watched it 10 years ago? And how do you feel about it now when you think back? It's in every movie that you watch. You ever watched a movie and went back and watched it later in life and like, why did I like this movie? I watched Breaking. And I remember Breaking being the greatest thing since sliced bread back in the 80s, with the breakdancing movie. And I tried to watch it again after like 20 years, a couple of years ago. And I was like, this movie is so bad. I didn't get through it. I keep telling myself that I'm going to go back and rewatch that movie, and I've yet to do it. Finish watching it, I should say. And I just can't do it. It's that bad. But I remember loving that movie. Transformers, the movie. Not talking about the Michael Bay films, but I'm talking about the animated film from back in the 80s, which was a staple of my childhood. Tried to go back and watch that a few years ago. I'm like, I just can't get into this. I don't know what's wrong. I don't know what happened, but I remember this being the greatest movie I ever saw in my life when I was, I don't know, 8, 9 years old. But now it's like, what? After Optimus Prime dies, spoilers, in that movie, I was done. That movie had no substance at all. But I would love to know when it comes to this. Did you watch this? And did you hate it? Do you ever plan to go back and watch it again just to see if it was real or not? Email the show, kbradiopodcast@gmail.com. You can also search for the show on all social media platforms. Just search for the KB Radio Network. Also, don't forget about YouTube. Subscribe to the KB Radio Network channel and like this video if you don't mind. Don't forget about the 5 stars, the reviews, and sharing this show if you're listening on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, iHeartRadio, wherever you are currently listening to Movie Goodness here on the KB Radio Network. Everybody, thank you for joining me for this look back 10 years, 1 decade ago. Batman v Superman, Dawn of Justice. Want you all to know that I love you, continue to love everyone, and until we speak again, you all be blessed.